some of our critics say, who are on our side, that unless we lead with the gospel, number one, we can't change hearts, because their argument is that those who are unregenerate can't recognize morality. Then their second argument is that we have to convert the culture in an evangelistic sense before we can convert them on abortion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those.
I think, first of all, I mentioned earlier, I'm a simple guy. I think that when you have a job to do, you need to understand what we talked about before. I need to understand the needs of my audience. I need to understand my goal with any particular audience that I'm outreaching to, and whatever form that outreach takes. And then I need to have a reasonable expectation of how I'm going to reach that. I think that passion is great. I think that a lot of times people mistake passion for effective communication, and they go in and they're just extremely passionate, but they're not actually accomplishing what they want to accomplish. And so when you go and talk to an audience, I have a goal. Just last week, I was talking to a young person in Michigan, where you and I both were, and she was talking about what I was saying, that I'm not as particularly concerned with the emotional responses of the people I'm talking to, because I expect my message to be upsetting. No matter how I can deliver, no matter how much I try to deliver this message in as nice and inoffensive way as I possibly can, I am going to offend by bringing the message that abortion is a great moral evil. And especially when we have the ability to use images or something, the intent is to prick the heart. The intent is to get them motivated, to shake them up, put a stone in their shoe. However you want to talk about it, we're trying to disrupt them out of the patterns of seeing the world in which they operate and introduce them into a new way to think about it. And there's no way to do that without being offensive to them and to how it's going to be received. And so one of the things that I told that young lady, because she said, well, when I offend them or when they get upset, I see that as an opportunity to minister to them in some sense of a pastoral care, she was saying. And I said, okay, well, that's great, but now you're doing another job, right? My job is to communicate the truth on the issue of abortion as cleanly and as clearly as I possibly can, for the effect of moving them from one position to another, or at least opening them up to the idea that this position is reasonable and that they might not be as settled where they thought they were. Sometimes my job is to interact with people who are going to be completely unmovable on this, but in front of an audience of people who may be movable audience, and so that I can just at that point show how in the engagement that side is lacking, that side does not have the ability to be able to explain the human experience, particularly the existence of equal human dignity. So
at that point, you're being very prudent in recognizing who your customer was. It's not that stubborn pro-abortionist, it's the audience watching the exchange. This leads me to something else that I think we need to address. You and I have both heard Christians say that unless people are born again, they can't recognize right and wrong. Speak to the idea that atheists are incapable of recognizing right and wrong.
Yeah, Tina Whittington at Students for Life America was watching me one time, and she came up and said, you know, the discussion of abortion is like a gateway drug to the gospel. And what it means is what
that's one way to phrase it.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to think about it, because I've seen this. What happens is I go and talk to audiences, and you and I have both had this experience. Let's say we go into a school, a largely secular audience is sitting in front of us of students. We talk for 45 minutes about abortion, then there may be an hour Q&A or whatever we're allowed to do. And when it's over, the principal or teacher or somebody brings students to us after and says, do you have time to continue this conversation with these students? These students are some of the more difficult, some of the smarter but more difficult students we have on particular issues. And almost all the time, what those students want to talk about is not abortion, but God.
Yeah.
And what happened is, and what happened was, because we represented this view in a way that was respectful, rational, reasonable, they become curious about the communicator. And because we're honest and clear when we're up there, I am here as a Christian. I am first and foremost a Christian. It may not be the means by which I argue or the manner in which I argue. I may not be appealing to Scripture, but don't be deceived about anything. The guy standing in front of you is fully and completely devoted to Christ. Since they know that about me, but they've heard me argue in a way that is respectful and reasonable to them, which oftentimes they'll tell me, I found that shocking. Right? I was not expecting this kind of a conversation.
Oh,
This
I've
has now
had this
opened them
happen
up
all the time. Yeah, all the
all the
time.
time.